Hey guys, what's up and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, hi, I hope you all are having a fantastic day. So today I'm going to be reading two scary stories that I found on Reddit and I'm just going to jump right into it. The first story is called I received a warning message from my childhood friend, but he's been dead for 10 years. I got another message. It has been happening almost the same time every night. I don't know how this is happening. He is not here. Danny is gone, or at least I thought he was. I know he is gone in the physical sense at least, but unless this is some sort of cruel digital trolling, he may not be completely gone after all. The question I face now is if he is haunting me or maybe trying to warn me of something. It started almost a month ago. I was at work at the store just finishing up my shift, another late night. I was walking out the back to the parking lot just a little after midnight when I received a strange text from a number I didn't recognize. The number didn't look familiar, but what caught my eye was the name on the text thread was referring to me as AJ's. I was surprised and a bit confused since I had never gone by AJ's. I thought harder for a moment and did recall that my old friend Danny had called me that a lot and I never corrected him since I called him Danny Boys, and we both annoyed each other with the nicknames. I felt sad thinking about Danny since he had passed away about 10 years ago in a car accident. I was a bit flustered seeing the message that was addressed with the nickname since no one else had ever called me that. I looked at the body of the message and it was a garble of special characters and spaces with only a single legible word in the jumble, please. I was confused by the bizarre message and the reference to my old nickname, so I responded asking who it was and what the message was supposed to be asking for. There was no response. I tried to push it from my mind, but it was bothering me. No one else besides Danny had ever called me that. The entire event got me thinking about the day 10 years ago. Danny and I were 16 and he had just gotten his license in a car. It was a decently used gray Toyota Camry that his parents got him. We certainly wouldn't complain. My parents were never able to afford even a used car for me, so we were both stoked that his parents were able to get him one, which meant that we both had a newfound freedom. That freedom was never meant to be, since the very next day when volunteering to get some groceries from the store for his parents, his car was struck by a drunk driver. He was pronounced dead at the scene, and I didn't find out until later that day when I couldn't get a hold of him and had tried to call his parents. I was devastated and felt even worse since our last encounter was a bad fight we had gotten into over something. I can't even remember what that stupid fight was about, but that led to us canceling our plans to go to the movies that night. Instead, he had been at home with his parents, and that had inadvertently led to him dying on that road alone. He had been my best friend, and I was not there for him. I still felt guilty about it, like it was my fault, and if I had just not been so crappy to him that day and we had not fought, that he would still be here. I felt doubly guilty that I had not even realized it was almost the 10-year anniversary of it happening. I continued on my way home, deep in thought and regret, and the rest of that night was uneventful. That next evening was my day off. I was a bit wired, so I stayed up later than normal and was just getting ready to go to sleep. Then again, just after midnight, I got a notification of another message. It was on the same thread as before. It still had a jumble of characters, but the word beware was the only recognizable thing on the message. I was shocked again by the strange message and once again asked who this really was and what did they want. Again, no response. I had two words that sounded like the beginning of a request from this weird source. Please and beware. Please beware. Please be aware of what? I thought. That was so weird. I tried to look the number up online, but turned up nothing. I couldn't figure out who was contacting me or why, or how they knew what Danny used to call me for that matter. I had a restless and uncomfortable night dreaming of the past and the uncertain future again. The following day I tried to do everything normally, but I kept thinking about the message, and even though I was very tired, I forced myself to stay up till midnight, expecting another message. At 12 a.m., I was almost convinced it had stopped, but I got a longer message than the previous ones. It was still mostly garbled characters, but it had what looked like ones and zeros this time too, like some sort of matrix-like binary code. Danny was really good with computers, I thought to myself. He wanted to get a job working in IT somewhere when we grew up. I shook myself out of my reminiscing and looked for any words. This time I had two intelligible words, die and sorry. This message chain was starting to freak me out. I don't know who thought it was funny sending me cryptic message about death and beware, but I was not laughing. I was still unable to find anything about that number, despite my efforts in trying to locate its source. On the next 2 nights, right on time, I received more messages. More garbled characters, more binary. It looked like it was getting larger and bigger blocks than before, and what looked like a date format. No words, but it looked like 0125, and on the next night it was 24. I was once again confused and bewildered by the messages. Was that January 25th? That was the day 10 years ago when Danny died. And 24, that must have been the year 2024. Who is really sending these? I thought with rising frenzy. The next 2 days were the same thing again. A couple words and some weird characters, though less garble and more binary it looked like. It was a large block now with odd breaks in between. The words were I'm and you. I didn't know what this was. Was Danny really talking to me from beyond? Was he trying to contact me near the anniversary of his death? Was it a warning or a threat? I couldn't figure it out, and I feared the next message as much as I anticipated it. Last night, just after midnight, I received the most recent message. Contained therein was the same as before, but with almost no random characters, just large blocks of binary and the words will, on, and my nickname AJ's. One more time. It was not the message itself, but what I tried afterwards that has left me shaken to the core and left me pondering my own fate. What I tried this time was taking the large blocks of binary that left me perplexed before and combining them with breakpoints intact so they resembled something like this: 010001 011011010. I considered Danny and his affinity with computers and decided to put these into a binary text translator, and as I sit here now trembling at the results, I shall share them with you, the reader, and maybe you can tell me if there's anything I can do before it's too late. What the characters above and in the messages translate into is this: AJ's, please be aware you will die on 1/25/2024. I'm sorry. If this is true, then I don't have much time. I don't know what to do. It is after midnight again, and I can't bear to see what messages come next. I turn my phone off and lie awake, my heart pounding in my chest. Just as I am about to fall asleep, I hear a burst of static as my TV comes to life in the living room. I see more binary in the beginning of a message again. I rub my eyes and try to focus on the message when it disappears and leaves a blue crash screen. I sit up to get closer and turn off the TV when I fall back onto my bed in disbelief as the mutilated visual of Danny appears on my TV. I can't speak, I can't breathe, I just stare at my dead friend. He does not seem to be able to speak either. He looks at me though, almost sorrowful. The image flickers between a slow motion car crash and a drama movie, showing a grieving family at a funeral and then a weekly forecast. Finally, it comes back to Danny. He holds up a hand to the glass of the screen, and I hear a faint static sound and the words being mouthed that look like goodbye, I'm sorry. He vanishes, and a second later, the TV screen explodes. It's real. It's all real. What can I do? I'm sorry too, Danny. Sorry for everything. Oh my god. Oh my god. I have no words. I don't know what I would do in that situation. That's fucking terrifying. Like, imagine your best friend dies and then on the 10-year anniversary they're just like, yeah, sorry, you're gonna die. Nope. Anyways, we're gonna jump right into the next one. So this one is called The Doppelganger. I never truly had a problem with where we lived. It was a secluded area, but that also just meant privacy was easy to come by. It was a small county in eastern Tennessee that had maybe 100 houses or so. It was just me and my parents alone in the mountains. My dad worked as a county game warden and usually never got home until around 8 or 9 at night. I remember one night though, he came home rather early. He always had keys to open the door with and would typically come right in, grab something to eat, sit in his recliner, and then head straight to bed. But tonight he came in and silently sat at the table, not moving or eating. He just sat there with his head in his hands. Something wrong, Dad? I asked. He turned to look at me with a grim look of sadness crawling over his face. Oddly enough, it seemed to quickly contort to a look of concern now. Mike has been missing from the station for almost 2 days. Nobody has been able to track him down and his family is becoming restless. It's just been hard to face a wife and kid who think they've lost their husband and father. That's all, buddy, he told me, with almost a solemn tone to his voice. Mike was his partner for the past few years. He was a younger man, no more than maybe 30 years old. Mom came in and started having a conversation with Dad while I returned to the TV. Their voices both cracked from time to time. I presumed it was due to the gravity of the situation. About 10 minutes later, Dad returned to the living room with Mom, and they turned the TV off while I was watching it. Before I could protest, they both looked at me and spoke. Son, until all this clears up, I want you to promise me a few things, okay? From now on, don't open the door for anybody. Me and your mother both have keys, and we can let ourselves in, he told me while I listened intently. We won't have a need to knock or call for you, and if you hear any of that, simply ignore it and go to your room. You have our cell phone numbers, so please just call us if you need to, he finished. I nodded my head, slightly concerned about the exact reasons for this specific rule, but it wasn't out of the ordinary for my parents to occasionally be strict. Agreeing to their terms, I went to sleep. I was on winter break from school, so I had no reason to rise early. The next morning, I got up when my mom was sending Dad off to work. They always gave each other a peck and said, "I love you," before parting ways. This morning, though, seemed somehow more dire than usual. There was a grave sense of concern in my mother's voice as they said goodbye. The day was rather normal, up until it was time for Dad to come home. He didn't use the keys like usual, he just knocked. I almost didn't think it was him until I remembered his truck lights pulling up through the window. I figured I'd play along and open the door with a funny face or a joke to greet him. But when I opened the door, I was only met with a furious father. "Trey, what was the one simple rule I told you to follow?" he said. His voice was stern and angered. "I'm sorry, Dad. I knew it was you," I replied. "No, you didn't. You just thought it was me. I told you I would let myself in." His voice bellowed loudly at me. My mom walked in and seemed to try and calm him down. "Henry, he's just confused, and I'm sure he won't make the mistake again. Go easy on him," my mom said softly. Dinner was quiet that night. Between Dad being furious with me and Mom trying to keep the peace, you could cut the tension with a knife. Mom tried breaking the ice. "Any updates on Mike?" she asked. "We got a call this morning. They found him down by the Deer Point Creek," he said, sounding somewhat hopeless. "Well, that's great. I'm sure his family was relieved," Mom said to him. Dad looked up with tears in his eyes. It took a moment, but both me and my mom realized the gravity of the situation. Mom never asked if he was found alive, and now, somehow, we knew she didn't need to. "Look at me, both of you," Dad said in a demanding voice. "I don't know if it's a person or a thing, but right now this mountain isn't safe. I can't explain the testimonies and the stories that I got surrounding Mike, but I know that whoever did this is smart," he told us. "They're posing as other people, pretending to be someone they're not so that they can get into their homes and lives," he said. Dad looked over at me and saw the concern in my eyes. He excused me from the table and said he loved me before sending me to my room so he and Mom could talk. I tried listening, but I couldn't make out what was being said. Mike, wife, body, 2 weeks ago, hiding, house, 2 missing, is all I could make from their chat. That night I had had trouble sleeping. The jumbled words I had made out played in my head over and over like a blank record. I tried piecing together the bits of conversation that I had heard. So far I had Mike's wife said, "Body 2 weeks old, someone hiding in the house, 2 kids missing." I shuddered at my concoction of the mind. What I made up, Mike's wife said his body was found 2 weeks old. Even though they found it this morning and apparently he was only missing for a few days, that begs the question of who was with his family all that time. My thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the window that made my heart stop. It was too dark to see anything, but the person knocked again. "Trey, can you let me in?" he said. I recognized the voice. It was my father's voice. "Dad, what are you doing outside?" I asked. He took a moment to respond. I thought I heard something and went to check it out, but the door shut behind me. "It's cold out here, buddy. Let me in." I was still frozen in fear, but somehow my concerns got worse as a figure appeared in my doorway. It was my father, wearing his typical loungewear pajamas. He held a finger up in silence to me, signaling me to be quiet. "Trey?" the voice from outside called out. My dad erupted so abruptly that I jumped in bed. "Get away from my house. Stay away from my family," he yelled. The voice from outside never replied. The only sounds I could hear were what seemed like growls and something that sounded similar to a cat's purr. My dad wrapped his arms around me and told me it was okay, and he was proud of me for not complying to the person's request. The next morning, Dad called off work. He decided to stay home with me and Mom, presumably to ensure whatever was at my window last night wouldn't come back. That night, around 9 at night, we all three heard a knock at the door. My dad didn't respond and held his hand up to signal us all to remain silent. "Guys, it's just me," the voice rang out. "I'm headed to the station for an emergency. Did I leave my keys to the house in there?" he replied. My mother had tears swiftly form in her eyes, while my heart began to beat faster and faster. I was hoping you'd show up tonight. I wanted to catch you off guard, my real father called out to the voice. The only noise that followed was a quick yelp, and like a dog had been frightened, and the patter of feet scurrying away. Henry, what was that? My mother asked him. My dad held his head down as he thought about how to respond. I don't know, Amanda, but I know it wants in the house, he replied in a hushed tone. Dad radioed for several of his officer friends to come to the house. When they arrived, they found that our mailbox was torn to shreds, our flag torn from the house, and small holes dug into the yard everywhere. What was at our door must have thrown a tantrum after Dad sent it away. We all three walked outside, and Dad agreed to attempt to follow the being with his friends. He made Mom promise not to open the door, like usual. As we both made our way back inside, I went straight to my room to hide under the blanket and pray that I wouldn't hear a knock or a call. My pleasant surprise, I didn't. About an hour later, Dad called to tell us that he was on his way home and they couldn't find anything. I presumed Mom was in shock still because she didn't reply. She only weakly nodded her head. Dad got home and walked straight to the door. He was scared about something but also mad too. Trey, Amanda, who left the door unlocked? He yelled at us. Mom tried calming him down. Honey, nobody knocked or tried to come in. I've been watching the door all night, she assured him. Dad looked around frantically. Henry, I think you're just paranoid about us. We're okay, and so are you, she told him. They both walked to their bedroom as I returned to mine. The next morning, I woke up and found the house vacant. Mom nor Dad was in their room. I saw the front door open and presumed they were outside. I smelled something, though. It was vile and disgusting. It was coming from their bedroom. I walked in, and the putrid aroma was coming from within their closet. I opened the closet and realized just how crucial our mistake was last night. I saw the body of my mother. A single slash wound in her neck had caused blood to spill out everywhere on the carpet. I cried as I stood there and fell to my knees, my own mother dead in front of me. As I looked at her body, my mind began to flare, as if I had noticed something without actually noticing it. My mother didn't have a mole under her eye. As a matter of fact, her eyes were uneven, with her left eye almost drooping below her nose. She had no teeth, but upon further inspection, she had no place for them. This woman or thing wasn't my mother at all. As the thought crossed my mind, I looked up to see both of my parents storm into the room with the police. They apologized to me while escorting me outside. They said they had hoped to catch me before I woke up to explain, but the story I was given was clearly a fabricated story to shield me from what really happened. I was told a woman was trying to break into our house after Dad had written her a ticket that pushed her over the edge, but I wasn't buying it. I knew this thing was capable of far more than just being a psycho. Psychos don't manipulate voices and faces at will. Whatever that thing was, it was dead. That's all that matters to me. As we walked to our car to allow the investigators to continue, I looked at my dad who had put his arm around me. I noticed something. Did he always have black hair? Wait. So his dad was the doppelganger. That's fucking crazy. So, okay, so that makes me wonder, like, was the woman in the closet, was that actually his mom? And, like, was she, like, actually just, like, that mutilated that he thought that it wasn't his mom? Oh my god, I have so many questions. That was so fucking good. So, I got, like, Skinwalker vibes from that. But the story is called Doppelganger, so I don't know if they were going for, like, a Skinwalker vibe, but, like, that was pretty good. That was really fucking good. Now I'm kind of scared. Anyways, that's all I have for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the story. As always, both stories will be linked down below in the description if you want to go show the OP some love. And I love you guys, and I will see you next week. Bye.